My mom wasn't exactly a fan of any of my girlfriends, except for one. I wouldn't say I was particularly bothered by that, but it did make things easier when my ear finally stopped itching. The only girl she ever liked was Ella, and that was mainly because she worked in healthcare, specifically as a nurse. The funny part was, Ella was the most stunning girl I'd ever been with. But according to my mom, she was just ordinary trash. We'd been living together for about a year, and things were going well. We even talked about the future sometimes, about maybe getting married. But honestly, I was starting to get stressed out by her job, or more specifically, the crazy hours she worked. She was in the ER at the gynecology department, and there were plenty of times when her day shift turned into a night shift, or vice versa, because they were always short-staffed. Sometimes she'd get called in on her days off. With her schedule, it felt like we couldn't plan anything, and it really started to bug me. This created tension between us. Ella didn't want to change her job. It was the one she had always dreamed of. "I've wanted to be a doctor since I was a kid," she'd say. "But you're not a doctor," I'd reply. Sure, later I admitted I was being a little harsh, but honestly, I just wanted to spend more time with her. At home, she mostly either did housework or slept off her shifts. But even so, I loved her, and I tried to make things easier for her around the house. I've been into motorcycles since I was young, so I finally fulfilled that dream and bought one. Ella didn't mind me riding, as long as I was careful. I always followed the rules. Never riding in the city, always cautious. But of course, accidents happen. Mine came when I was riding my bike one day. At an intersection, some old guy on a bicycle cut right in front of me. It wasn't my fault, though maybe I was going a bit faster than I should have. But still, I didn't escape without injuries. The bike was pretty much totaled, and I couldn't even imagine how much it would take to fix it. The ambulance showed up quickly, and they threw me in the back with no real urgency, bringing me to the hospital. The one bright spot was that it was the same hospital where Ella worked. Turns out, my injuries were pretty serious. I'd need surgery, followed by a long recovery. I had to stay in the hospital for a while. And honestly, it felt almost like a blessing in disguise. Ella had the day off, but she came rushing to see me, holding back tears. She was angry at my bike and at that old man. "Come on, calm down," I tried to reassure her, but honestly, after the anesthesia, I wasn't feeling too great myself. How am I supposed to calm down? "Do you realize you might need another operation?" she said. "And the recovery. Do you have any idea how long that's going to take?" "Hey, I'm alive. That's the important thing," I said. "You're right," she replied, and then kissed me before glancing over at the monitors. "Well, at least you're here, and I'll make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible." She worked her magic, setting me up in a private room and making sure I was well taken care of. At first, I fought it. Lying there all alone was boring, but they didn't really ask for my input, so I ended up listening to the hospital gossip, which was endless. The nurses and aides across from my room would discuss everything. The patients, their coworkers, like it was a full-time job. Some of it was funny, but mostly it was just petty chatter, digging into each other's personal lives. I hated that part, but they didn't care. Most of the time, the gossip centered on one nurse who was clearly having an affair with Asher. Every chance she got, she'd practically throw herself at him. It was obvious to everyone in the department, and it really rubbed people the wrong way. I couldn't help but wonder what made people so furious about it. I mean, she wasn't even in their department, but as I found out later, she worked in a different one. Asher, on the other hand, was a big deal, the head of traumatology, an esteemed doctor with a spotless reputation. He had a wife and 3 kids at home. Still, there she was, all over him every time they crossed paths. "No, but have you seen that bitch?" I overheard one of the nurses saying, just when I was trying to catch a nap after lunch. "She was all over him again. It's disgusting." Yeah, but he doesn't seem to mind, came the reply, with a chuckle. Well, what guy wouldn't like having his legs spread in front of him every time they meet? The first voice said, laughing. Then footsteps echoed down the hallway, and the conversation stopped. Not long after, Ella came in with lunch, mashed potatoes and cutlets. I told you not to bother, I said, sitting up a little. I already ate. Really? With this? She asked, surprised. Yeah, it's a perfectly normal meal, I replied, trying to smile. We chatted for a bit, and she left. Then, just as I was settling back in, a nurse came in. Was that your sister? She asked, smiling. Did she arrange a private room for you? Yep, she's not my sister, she's my fiancée, I said, trying to keep it casual. The nurse froze, choking slightly, and then shook her head before walking off to get back to work. Her reaction was strange. But then again, this place was full of strange people. Later that night, I overheard another conversation. Can you believe there's a guy in here, lying in a private room? The first voice said. Really? The second one asked, sounding shocked. Yeah, that guy in the private room with the broken bones after the accident. Poor guy's in pain, and behind the wall, there's another guy, tumbling with that nurse. She's even the one who set up his private room for him. It made me sick to hear. And the worst part, they were talking about Ella, the woman I was planning to marry. I felt my stomach turn. The next day, I couldn't take it anymore. I threw my entire lunch at her, hitting her with mashed potatoes and gravy. So I don't ever have to look at you again, I said slowly, watching the sauce drip down her uniform. What's going on? She asked, confused. Seriously, you really thought I wouldn't find out? I snapped. You're sleeping with Asher, and you thought I wouldn't notice. She looked at me, pale as a ghost, and then, to my surprise, she tried to play it off. What are you talking about? Asher, what's the big deal? You know exactly what I'm talking about, I said, my voice trembling with anger. Then she just sat there, looking defeated, her face drained of color. Get out, I yelled. I wanted to get up and throw her out myself, but I was stuck in bed. So she left silently. I spent 2 more weeks in that hospital, enduring the nurses' whispers and sympathetic glances. From what I could gather, Ella had quit, and once the higher-ups caught wind of the rumors, her career started to falter. I also learned that she'd left the keys to our apartment on my bed in the ward. We never spoke again. In fact, I felt relief. I heard through the grapevine that she couldn't find work in her field anymore. The rumors had spread fast, and no one wanted to touch her with a 10-foot pole.